Alrighty guys, welcome back to the video. If you're new here, my name is Jackson. I am an online physique coach and a bodybuilder. We're in Bali, which is awesome. So I'm going to be taking you guys through exactly what sort of my training looks like in Bali at the moment, how I'm sort of managing everything. I'm going to do another video as well on just sort of like how I'm also eating in Bali. So I'm going to take you along for that. I just got off a call with my business mentor, went over a few things in regards to just like how I'm managing business now that I'm fully online and whatnot. So that was really insightful, going through all things content, going through all things like, you know, onboarding clients, setting calls, that sort of stuff. Just like more in the trenches business stuff. Nothing that's too interesting for you guys to listen to. You're not here to listen about my business. You're here to listen more about how I training advice and that sort of stuff. So just wrap that up. I'm gonna get ready to go to the gym. The weather today is absolutely awful, which is quite annoying because we've actually had really good weather the past couple of days that we got here. It is rain season in Bali, so it can rain obviously, but it's terrible today. So getting on that bike and going to the gym is going to be a lot of fun, but I'll show you guys what the weather looks like. See that? Happy Jan, but it's alright. We deal with the obstacles that are thrown at. But training this week overall has actually been pretty good. I have to say, you know, we're obviously still working and whatnot while we're here and doing a bunch of stuff, but overall, like, training has actually been really good. We're training at Elite Fit, which is in Canggu, which is where we're staying. So it's been really good, and I've actually had some really decent sessions. Why is this not focusing? That's better. We've actually had some really decent sessions. I did legs yesterday. We've had to train 5 days straight because we got here on Monday and we got here like 2-3 o'clock, and we just had to unwind by the time we got here with the traffic. It was terrible. So training on Monday was non-existent, and then the hardest thing actually has been doing steps. Like, because in Bali, like, there's nowhere really to walk. So you're on a bike everywhere you go and you're not doing a lot of steps. So it's actually quite difficult to get your steps in, and I have a goal of 10,000 steps per day. So we've been going to the gym like twice a day to do a morning block of our training and do a bit of steps after the training, and then come back in the afternoon and do some steps as well. But yesterday we actually went to the beach, watched the sunset and got some steps on the beach. So that was really helpful. But today we're training a pool day, which is my secondary pool day. I actually got my new program for next week, which is super exciting. Calories are staying basically at the same. We're just sitting at 3,200. Managing food here has actually been quite easy, considering it just requires a level of planning to get there. But overall, like, goal-wise, we're still very much on track and everything's still tracking extremely well. Feel good. Obviously a few dinners out. We had Kayla's birthday and whatnot too. So there's just a few things that you need to manage in order to like still stay on track while you're in Bali. You know, just ticking some boxes and doing some planning, bringing protein powder, going to the shops and buying some fruit, some veg and some oats and stuff like that, just to like not always have to buy meals out, because you don't have to spend ridiculous amounts of money just always buying meals out, even though we are doing a lot of that, but it's still very reduced compared to what you would if you were on a normal holiday. So still managing things quite well, but we're gonna head to the gym, we're gonna hit a back sesh, and I'll run you guys through that. It's raining and we don't want to go to the gym.
It's cold in Bali. I don't like it.
What are you training?
I've got upper body.
A shave. Bit of pre to get the stimulants going. I actually really like this pre.
I do when there's more water mixed with it. The only thing is it doesn't make you
Altered state.
it doesn't make you tingly, which I like.
It makes me a little bit tingly, but not to the point where it's like too much, which I also like.
No, I like the tingle.
Oh.
Like I wish it made me tingly, because then I feel like it's like doing something.
Alright, well, I was gonna try and film us on the bike, but I might have to do it on my phone because it is so wet outside. Alright, we made it to the gym. We tried not to die on the scooter. It's fucking pouring rain here. That was a really fun ride. We couldn't get a fucking poncho or a raincoat from any of the marts or the 7-Elevens that were nearby, so we had to just raw dog it, but we made it. We're here. We're just getting some steps in to dry off, and then we're gonna get into the session. So we just started off with some lat pullovers. Now, one of the questions I get asked a lot is when you're training different gyms, how can you sort of like still make sure you're progressing in load or like progressively overloading and whatnot? And you just have to worry about like the intensity, making sure that you're managing and still trying to hit the same amount of intensity as you would if you were training at the normal gym you train at. Because sometimes you just like the way cables or machines are loaded, they're not always going to be the same as what you usually train at. So you might go heavier, you might go lighter. So always do like 1 to 2 warm-up sets when you're starting on new machines or new cables, especially when you're training at new gyms, just to get the hang of it, get the feel of it, so you can get a good idea of how much weight you should be doing, and you should just be matching the intensity. So still training 1 to 2 reps shy of failure. The other thing as well is like you might not always have access to the same machines as you do at the old gym that you're at or the gym that you're originally training. So matching movement patterns. So for me, it's like this machine is almost very similar to the one I would usually use at World Gym, where it's like a 45-degree pull down variation. But it's like if I didn't have this, I'd probably just set up a bench and do a single arm pull down 45-degree variation, still matching that movement pattern. But just because you don't have the same machine or the same setup, you can still make do with the pattern that you need to train, trying to train the muscle at the same angle or at the same sort of plane of motion that you need to train it in, so that you can still match the program that you have. So you can still obviously make progress into the way that you're trying to train for your goals at different gyms. You just have to you might have to get a little bit creative with it. You might have to think a little bit on the spot to make those changes. Okay, so a great example is this machine. This machine's good, I like how it feels. But the only problem with it is that there's no chest supported. So you'll see when I do this movement, there's no like chest support here, so it's hard for me to get stable and able to move the weight the way I usually would. The old machine I have at the gym I usually train at, I have a chest support there, so I'm able to stabilize myself a little bit more. And as we know, the more stable an exercise is, the more you're going to be able to put more emphasis on the target muscle that you're trying to train when you externally stabilize all those surrounding joints and the surrounding muscles. So for me to get the most out of this, it isn't the most ideal, but this is the last week of my program with this exercise in, so it doesn't really matter too much. Yes, long term, probably not ideal, but you know, we're still making do with what we can, and sometimes that is definitely good enough, because if I just skip this exercise altogether, then I'm getting nothing out of it. Whereas here, I'm still getting something out of it. I'm still training the muscle, I'm still taking it to failure, I'm still getting something out of the exercise. It just might not be as good as what it could be. So still make that effort, still try and change the exercise if you need to. but it just might not always be the perfect situation, and that's okay. Well, the original exercise I was supposed to do for this was a machine low row, but obviously they didn't have one here. And the back machine they do have, I've already used this week. So just for a bit of variety, I opted for the seated cable row with an overhand grip, and it is on a bit of an angle, similar to what the low row would be anyway. So as I said, like, it just requires a little bit of thinking, a little bit of understanding of actually how to train your back properly if you want to get the most out of your sessions when you're traveling and that sort of stuff. So when it comes to back training, you just have to understand like angles of movement, and the planes of movement in which you're actually moving is what's going to dictate what part of the back you're moving or you're training. So if you want to target your lats, any sort of vertical or 45-degree pull downs is always going to be some sort of lat focus. I think the elbows dictate of which part of the back you're using. So if your elbow's close to the body, you're going to get a lot more lat. If the elbow's further away from the body, you're going to get more rear delt and upper back and that mid-trap area. So when you're trying to understand what you need to do to replace an exercise because they don't have the machine, just think what part of the back am I actually trying to train, and then replacing it with that. And the movement doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to train the muscle that you're trying to target. That's it. When it comes to the face pull, I like to do it seated, mainly because we don't always want to be targeting for the most stable amount of exercises. Sometimes we don't always want stability, but majority of the time, if your goal is to build more muscle mass, then we do want to be opting for more stable exercises. So using a seated rather than a half kneeling variation, which is the common way to do a face pull. Using the seated, you're going to leverage your body weight a little bit more, so placing more tension on the upper back because you've got more stable, and then you're going to be able to move a little bit more load as well, which is overall going to place more tension on those target muscles too. Where the half kneeling, you're kind of fighting the weight after you get to a certain point, and then you're not going to be able to connect with the upper back as much, you're not going to be able to move as much load, and it's just going to put a ceiling on your ability to progress that movement.